Someone called me in the comment section a deckhand. They said, you look like a deckhand. And at first I had to think about that. I was like, what does that mean? Yeah, I'll give it to him. A deckhand, as in someone who works on the deck of a ship, like a boatsman. And, I'll take it. I'll embody that. I love that. I really do. Because, what kind of deckhand I am? I'm a deck daddy. Dude, the Steam Deck has been such a joy. And can you believe that 1 year ago, not today, because it would have been the 1st of November, but 1 year ago, this cup extravaganza started. Now, back then, it was called Caffeine and Consoles. And this year, it's no longer called Caffeine and Consoles. This year, it is called Cups with JD. Season 2 is Cups with JD. Whether this is Season 2, a fresh start, a new direction, whatever you want to call it, this is the next iteration of what I have as far as my creativity. And a lot of it being around the PC gaming space. Made a cup yesterday all about the Steam Deck versus the Nintendo Switch. And it really wasn't a versus video. I think that it might have been misunderstood as a versus video, and people were like, oh, the Steam Deck is not even in the same category as the Nintendo Switch. And while I do agree with that to a certain extent, I think that really the point I was trying to make yesterday is that with the amount of time the next Nintendo console is taking, I think that maybe some of the interest in whatever their library can offer is going to diminish. I don't know if that's going to affect the grand scheme of things all that much. Let me make sure I'm recording here. I am. But I think that really it's going to cause a little bit of, library splitting. Today it's more just relaxing. It's Thanksgiving. I'm not recording this on Thanksgiving. I've actually recorded it the day before. Did some shopping, but this has been a brutal year. A really brutal year. I have experienced some stuff that I just would have never thought. At the beginning of the year, I experienced some weird physical issues. I started to feel nerve pain in my back, radiating down my legs. And quickly over the course of, I would say, a month, I had been reduced from my everyday weightlifting, CrossFit workouts, sometimes twice a day, to walking. And from there, walking was even painful. And I'd found myself actually sedentary for the first time in a decade. And in that time, I got really depressed. Really depressed. Every day waking up was painful. Every moment of my day was painful. Every moment inside my brain was painful. And at the same time, I had a very, very young boy who was different in his own right. My daughter, when she was his age, it was a very different experience. My wife was home from work for a very long time because, the world was going through a little bit of a growing pain. And a lot of people were home from work. This time around, I was soloing it at home with the children and trying to figure out at the same time my purpose, my identity, and everything. And it was so unbelievably crazy. My body was in excruciating pain, and that really shortened someone's temper. And so dealing with a screaming, at the time, I would say 6-month-old, and my wife going back to work, me having to figure out bottles, breastfeeding. No, I wasn't breastfeeding, but, in between her leaving for work, me making sure that the bottles had defrosted milk and all that stuff, it was complicated. And if you go back and watch some of the Caffeine and Consoles videos, which I have contemplated on listing because they truly showed me in some of the darkest points of my life, I look back at that time and I think to myself, wow, what a brutal moment. It's tough to explain exactly the feeling, but I have learned quite a bit through all of it. And I think a lot of it has to do with this space in general. I have been using the internet for an income for quite some time. This is certainly not something I would recommend anyone do. It is really, really fickle in a lot of ways. But in doing so, I had introduced a lot of uncertainty in my life. And really, I found myself back in a spot that I experienced when I was very young. And it was actually a very interesting moment for me. Something that I think years of therapy would not have brought out. It actually just took another, lifestyle crisis or whatever. But I found myself running to video games to help calm my mind. And I've mentioned it before, I've never used video games as an escape, because I don't do that. Not because I think there's anything wrong with it, though there might be. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and blame anyone for anything, because I do my own things to cope. I mean, for goodness sakes, I drink an inordinate amount of coffee. But that's more for ADHD, which is its own bag of tricks. I'm choosing one today. I'm choosing green. And I found myself running back to video games and finding comfort in this craft. But I would have never been able to do that if it wasn't for the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck, as it stood, was a device that really came out of nowhere for me. As a dad who was trying to figure out how to balance life and balance my hobby and not lose every aspect of myself, the Steam Deck was this nice, silver, not silver line, but this, I guess, golden heartbeat of a lifeline that I was handed. And it was very much so necessary through a lot of this, whether it was holding my son while he would, slept on me because he wasn't napping, and therefore I couldn't really get around, so I'll sit there and play the Steam Deck. Whether it was while there was napping, using the Steam Deck, because sitting, laying, and standing all was painful, and I could sit there and play the Steam Deck to get through just those moments of physical pain. Whatever it was, it actually helped bring me through a time that was just so unbelievably challenging. And I'm not going to say that I necessarily have overcome all of these things. I very much so, in this current state, am still dealing with physical pain and trying to figure out what it is. I don't know what it is. We're going to have to figure it out. But mentally, I've found a lot more strength. Now, I do believe a lot of this resolve came spiritually, and that is something that is, obviously unexplainable, miraculous, really tough to explain. And so that's, that spiritual intervention is its own thing. But I don't believe that healing is only available in some sort of grandiose, practical manner. I think that, practical things are utilized by greater powers, right? I believe that the Steam Deck at its time was truly a moment, a lifeline given to me to get through something that was unbelievably challenging. I believe that the Steam Deck was also something that was shown to me to use to help propel and meet a lot of you, now or future deck daddies. I believe that the Steam Deck is going to be also something that I'm able to use to help talk to other people, not because the device itself is granting me access, but the sentiment behind the device. A piece of hardware that is specifically being used by time-restricted daddies to try to spend 10 to 20 minutes when someone's sleeping, a break is happening, or we're just sitting in the driveway of our home waiting to go inside. Whatever it may be. I don't suggest you do that, but I know. Some of you guys do it. I tell you, there's been times when I've gone out to the grocery store while my wife is home just to get out for a few moments of silence, and I've come back and I've just parked outside my house and stayed in the car for 10 to 15 minutes in silence. I've done it. And hey, if that makes me a bad person, just consider me Miles Davis. Name that movie, y'all. But honestly, this past year has been wild. A lot of people use New Year's as a New Year's start. I never do. I always use Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving is kind of this moment where everyone's supposed to give thanks. And I use the November this time to not just give thanks, but to go back and kind of take inventory of everything that's happened. And the biggest things that I can take from this past year is it has been one of the most challenging, physically demanding, and excruciatingly painful years that I've experienced in my whole entire life. To get through that and to be emerging through or on the other side, I'm not on the other side, but to be emerging has been just anything short. Is it anything short of or everything short of? Anything, nothing short of, nothing short of, right? Nothing short, whatever. I'm not going to use the phrase. I don't even remember it. It has been just by the grace of God alone I've gotten through it. But I do believe, as odd as this may sound, that he used elements of the real world, because it's real, to think that, there would be no use of anything in the world. No. He used, elements of the real world to help pull me through. And just, I don't know where you're at. I don't know if you're someone who has it all put together. I don't know if you have someone who has none of it put together. If you're just hurting and you're like, I don't even know how I'm going to get through the day. I can assure you that the day will end and then you'll get to start a new one. And so with a new one comes new opportunities. But I will say this, I don't have it all put together. To be fully transparent without opening up too much, I don't have it all put together. I don't know where this is going to go. I would love for this to take off, but I don't have defined actual outcomes here because it's so up in the air. I am figuring it out in my mid-30s, just as many of you guys are. I don't have a technical career that's defined because I didn't go down the formal route. I decided that I was going to unconventionally enter the workforce and then continue to do so. All of my experience that has been considered resume-worthy has to do with coffee. I spent 10 years in the industry, and the other side of things is certification-based in CrossFit. I was a CrossFit coach and a barista for 10 years combined. Not combined, individually, but at the same time. They're great professions, I think. And who would have thought that in my mid-30s, my career choice or my current situation would be making coffee still, but discussing life and playing video games. I have big ideas, but little plans. That's what ADHD is. That's what we deal with. We have incredible ideas. I challenge you, if you have a friend who has ADHD and they know they have ADHD and they're not going to be offended by you accusing them of having it, ask them some of their ideas. They're going to be beautiful. They're going to be intricate. They're going to be, in some ways, like, oh my gosh, that'd be amazing. But then ask them their plan. No, don't ask them their plan. They'll get so self-conscious about it. But I have huge ideas for the next year. And planning-wise, I don't have a plan. Because I'll try to put a plan together and then who knows. One thing that I have been investing a ton of time in is live streaming. And the main reason why I've been spending so much time live streaming is because it allows me, as an individual who functions very well under pressure, to on the fly react and interact. I know that for a lot of you, live streaming may not be the best thing that you've experienced, whatever. I totally understand. And I'm not going to try to, strong arm you into coming over to a live stream. Don't sweat it. But I know that for me and the time that I'm investing in this space, I believe strongly that that style of content creation is one that I actually genuinely have strengths in. And I do plan on investing as much of my energy as possible into maintaining something along those lines. Live streaming for me has always been something I loved. I don't know how it's going to pan out and how to make it a viable option, but it is something I'm certainly spending a lot of time investing in because I believe strongly in the content, primarily, and B, I love doing it. But the primary reason why I love doing it is because I get to interact with others. And that is something that in my past year I have found to be the biggest missing link. I am like infectiously social person. Not that I myself am infectious, but that I need that in order to survive. Just like an infection, or I guess it's bacteria. Why am I using these as examples? This is terrible. This is very gross. And it's not bacteria, it's viral. Anyway, it's not important. I am someone who strives in those situations, thrives in those situations. Get it together, JD. I am someone who thrives in those situations socially. And the past year has been an absurdly lonely and isolating type of experience. One that I have learned through, which is that's not my strength. Becoming a YouTuber or doing the YouTube thing, while this is great and we are having these awesome conversations, making long-form YouTube videos that are curated, I get really excited because the creativity in me takes over and I'm like, ooh, let's get after it. But I feel empty inside because I just suck at maintaining focus in those situations. It's why I've been able to stream 5 days a week for 3+ hours. That's crazy. And I love it. And I would love to get to a point, and I hope that sometime this next year, or as I look at it as a season, by next November, I'm able to stream at a daytime slot and do some daytime streams, some 5 to 6 hour daytime streams. This for me is such an exciting thing to think about. And I hope to be able to come up with cool ideas in the live streams. I have a really, really big idea for the Indiana Jones release. I don't want to say it because I want to make sure it happens. You know how some people say it and people will hold you accountable? That's not what works with ADHD. You know what will work with someone with ADHD? They don't say it. Because once they say it, then they get the dopamine. That's what I'm learning about myself. Don't tell anyone anything at any time about any plans you have. Because A, it's probably not going to happen. B, you're going to let them down. C, you're going to break their trust. And so for Indiana Jones, I can tell you right now, I have ideas. The least that's going to happen is I'm going to play the game. I can assure you that much. But I have ideas. I realized that through a lot of that heartbreak, heartbreak because it was completely demolishing. I found out what doesn't work for me. I'm self-motivated, but the goal needs to be interaction. I am very driven, but the results of that need to lead to community. And something that's been so encouraging over these past months, this past year, has been the Discord community. Though I have broken trust multiple times because of my ADHD, novel, stupid actions, to see the people that stick around through it has really been encouraging, motivating even. And I find myself looking at the next year of my content creation thinking to myself, wow, how thankful, how fortunate am I? How fortunate am I to have people that are willing to struggle through it with me? That's been a very powerful, powerful moment. But learning from that, not just that, but also that your day-to-day could go from something that is spectacular to something that's not, and it doesn't change the fact that the clock still moves. It doesn't change the fact that there's still people that rely on you. And that's something that I didn't look at as easily this past year. Streaming, I thought to myself, I'm too tired, I'm going to take a nap, or I'm going to just skip today. I'm not feeling it. But when you have a 9 to 5, you can't do that. And someone's going to be like, well, you need to take mental health days from time to time. And while I think it's important to make sure you can take inventory, I think it's also important to understand responsibility. And for me, I realized that I wasn't taking things as seriously because, guess what? The boss, me, is going to forget about it. So I'm treating it different this next year. I'm treating it different already. I'm looking at those stream times going, I can't call in sick just because I'm tired. If I would have called my boss while I was working at the coffee shop on a closing shift and said, hey, I'm just kind of tired. I'm not going to come in. I would probably get some sort of official reprimand, but also that person would probably fight me. They'd be like, "You kidding me right now? Do you realize that there's people who rely on you?" And while I understand this is not exactly a like-for-like situation, that's something I realized in life. I spent the beginning part of my year in physical, mental, and emotional pain, right? And kind of just gave up and was like, oh, woe is me. My life sucks. Everything hurts. It's hard. My kids still needed to get fed. My daughter still needed love from a father. My wife still needed companionship. Nothing changed. People still needed me. And in those moments, I didn't show up because I was tired or I was hurting or I was whatever. Now, I understand that. Grace, which I experienced from my wife, which was, man, the closest I could get to the grace shown from me from God. But still, my wife showed me this grace that was unbelievable, allowing me to just clock out every night after she's been clocked in. Spectacular. But the biggest thing I realized through all of that was people still rely on me. People still rely on you. And while life can get challenging and tough and down, the clock doesn't stop. It never stops. And to some, that might be overwhelming, but to me, it's encouraging. And the encouraging part in a lot of that is we always have an opportunity to move forward. We don't have to move on, right? It's something that I learned very, very recently, which is you don't need to move on. You just need to move forward. You can sit in the sadness, in the angst, in the anger, in the frustration, as long as you're moving forward. You can be pissed off and finish the oil change. You can be sad and finish making dinner, right? Moving forward is so important. And I realized that this past year. And I'm thankful for that lesson, that moving forward is always possible, but you don't actually have to move on. Now, moving on is important, right? You don't want to just sit and dwell in something that is either over and you're just sulking, or hasn't been properly managed and you're just being a procrastinator of your potential misery. You want to, that didn't really make sense. You want to, of course, get to a point where you can move on, but that doesn't mean everything stops. And I think most of 2024 for me just was in this place of I can't move forward. Some days I couldn't. Some days I literally was physically incapable of moving forward. And so I didn't. But now, looking at all of last year and realizing how much of it was squandered in a way, but also, I mean, everything's a life lesson, right? I wouldn't know any of this if it wasn't for the failures I had. So this is beautiful. I mean, someone told me, I think it was a quote that someone had, that you either succeed or you learn. You never lose. That's incredible. That's an incredible sentiment. And it's wild to think that all of this was sparked from a video game console. The access to games that allowed me to mentally be able to actually come around and experience some of the feelings I had when I was a kid, being sad in some ways and being like, I'm just gonna play video games and work through some of this, and then be like, okay, let's go, and then knowing in the back of my mind that if times are getting tough and I need to just relax, I can boot up the console and get things going again. Like that helped me get through some of it. And then also understanding that I need to keep moving forward. I can't just pause on life anymore because I'm not my own, just in charge of just myself. I'm not just a bachelor. I have children and I'm a husband. I can't just clock out. I can't just turn on the Steam Deck and sit on the couch while chaos is ensuing around me, because that's irresponsible. I have to understand the balance that all of this came out of video games. Video games truly helped me process so much of this past year. And, each person's different. I'm sure that people process differently, and that's totally cool. For me, the access to my hobby was so healing throughout this past year that I would encourage anyone who has a hobby to really try to carve out time to spend doing it. Whether it's gaming, and if it's gaming, there are so many different ways to do it, or if it's mechanics or cooking or painting, heck, if it's fitness, whatever. It is healing to do, which is crazy. So I decided to try to figure out how to make my hobby my career. It hasn't been the perfect balance, and that's why the past few years have been so rocky, but I feel like I'm finally coming around to how it's supposed to be balanced. But who knows what the next year is going to have in store for us all. All I know is I am excited to do it. I'm not going to say I have huge plans, because I don't have huge plans. But I am going to say I have huge ideas, crazy ones. And I hope and pray that those ideas come to fruition in the next 12 months, and that Thanksgiving of next year will be a different conversation. That's my overarching goal. So, for me, this is my new year. For you, this is probably just Thanksgiving. And for the rest of you that don't even celebrate Thanksgiving, this is just a weird holiday that some people in the United States celebrate. All right. See you guys live over on twitch.tv/JDXCoffee. I really hope that some of these ideas happen because they're so cool. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Play more and be kind.